Hey, it's Chris, Liege Games. Now, this one's been sitting around for a while. It's actually been literally sitting around behind me. So, today, we are going to be taking a look at Fractal, Beyond the Void, the next of the 4X's. What do you need to know? 5 things to help you with decision making, and just general what you should know about the game in the first place. So, if you're interested, let's do this. One part of this video, definitely at the beginning here, is going to be a little bit of a head-to-head comparison, because I think it goes without saying that you can't look at this game as a spacefaring 4X game and not compare it to the obvious other games that are out there. Now, 2 well-established, one actually going head-to-head, essentially, in the sense that you have Twilight Imperium, you have Eclipse, the 2nd edition we'll talk about, and then you have Voidfall, which is running smack dab into Fractal as well right now. So the first thing that I think is the most glaring and most obvious difference from my experience with it, but just looking at all 4 of those games in general, is Fractal's much shorter. Now, I say that, but I'm going to put a caveat with that as well. So Fractal is shorter in the sense that they say 25 to 30 minutes per player, as opposed to the, 7 to 9 hours for Twilight Imperium, and the 4-ish plus or minus, depending on how you play the other 2 games, from Eclipse, which is a well-known quantity at this point, but also Voidfall, which is what the design team from Mindclash is saying, and as well as, the others involved in it. And most of the time, let's be frank, especially learning side of those things, those games tend to run longer. And you just need to be aware of that. And if you're looking for something more epic experiencing, but without the epic level length, I mean, right there, Fractal is a different spin on things. And I don't say that as a negative, like you're going to get a lesser value or a lesser experience, because the 4 in the 4Xing is still going to be present. Whether it's exploring, expanding, exploiting, or exterminating. This game has it all. Now, that's just an element of things that you need to be aware of, because frankly speaking, I find myself, my personal tastes, but also my game groups along these lines. I am a dad with 3 young kids. So if you're at all in my situation, or just frankly not in my situation, but I don't have time to sit down for a 4-hour, slog fest. And I say that in a positive sense. I mean, I have plenty of games I would love to play repeatedly and over a 4-hour time span, and just, oh yeah, that'd be awesome, campaign games, whatever it may be. But honestly, I don't have the time. I have 2-3 hours at most times I get together with people. And so this, right then and there, fits much better from that side of things. It just does. So what gets to the table with more frequency has to be in your mindset when you're backing things nowadays. Not just, this is a nice set piece to have on the shelf behind me to show off that I can spend extra whatever on, but I don't actually get to play it as much as I would potentially like. So that's the first point. Second point, this game has a campaign. A campaign that is going to unlock things, to add things, a legacy version of things that will give it more and more and more with subsequent plays. Now, this is more of a legacy aspect, if you will, as opposed to just like a campaign where you're trotting along from mission to mission. Where they say when you're playing through this, as they aptly named it, the aftermath, where how you win matters as opposed to just the sheer victory points when you're just playing in the regular situation, where in the regular game, how you win with military or science or whatever doesn't have really an influence. It's just whatever you get in terms of points in that sense. Whereas in the aftermath, how you win may affect, may unlock, may cause other certain things to happen afterwards in it. It sort of brings to life, as well as the example that they use is Warmonger, in the setting that certain technologies are culled, to make people focus on more of one objective, the military aspect, the military might, and the ramifications that that then has on the galaxy as in a whole after the consequences and the game ends. Now again, how you feel about that may or may not be something you're looking for, because this game essentially then, with these scenarios, with these sort of miniature modules, if you will, is going to force you to try and adapt to a different playstyle than you may want to play in the first side of things. And so, are you okay with that? Are you okay with having to be truly adaptable in that sense when you are trying to figure out how to go about this? The other aspect that they say is it's going to lead to asymmetry in the campaign sense, where you may unlock specific bonuses or specific upgrades that are more beneficial based on how you did in previous scenarios, like the Warmonger. It's going to give you a little bit better access to tailoring your approach to war and military in the future. And are you okay with that? Is that something you like? And then these modules, sort of as a third point, if you will, these modules that you are not seeing as much with any of these other games. I mean, you're seeing variability and replayability, but modules then are accordingly added to the base game to allow for more from that side of things. To add to, I guess, more of the third point being the asymmetry. A heavily, heavily based asymmetric game. And again, not necessarily being drastically different from the other three that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, but this is coming with 6 different core factions that have 3 ways in which they are asimilar, different, if you will, if you prefer that term, in each manner as opposed to the other factions. And that is before you are unlocking more factions in this Aftermath campaign legacy style of things. Point 4 is that the technology trees, as often in these games, are all done slightly differently. Now, this one takes a little bit of a different twist on things, where you are given a set number of technologies per round, per sort of section of the game. A round 1 section and a round 2 section. But you are only given 5 copies. Point 4 is really the issue of unlocking things along your research tracks, whether it is scientific research, the military might, or any of the other ones, where it is taking a mechanism sort of like Spirit Island, if you will, where as you take the tokens off and colonize and use them and place them on the map, you then unlock an upgrade in that action itself going forward. So you are progressively getting stronger in that way. And that's a unique way of how you are making your faction even more asymmetric. Sort of as a 4B, if you will, it goes straight along with how technologies are done. In Age 1 and Age 2, there are a limited amount of technologies that you have access to, that everyone has access to. And so the game is forcing you then in a positive way to make asymmetric decisions. And so what you are doing in a nutshell is you are researching them, placing your pieces on said technology card until you have enough to buy a copy. But the caveat is that although everyone has access to them, there are only 2 copies. So once that second copy is gone, you're SOL. So how you choose to access the technology, when you choose to try and utilize it, and you can also choose to monopolize it. You can get the same technology twice and get twice the ability, thus also limiting anyone else's ability to have access to it in the first place. Which, frankly speaking, again, you don't see that in other games. That element of, albeit a little bit of cutthroat nature in a 4X game that should have, I would think by the definition of it, some of that to force the conflict, force the narrative, force people to not turtle, and thus speed up the game as well in a positive way. The last part of this asymmetry as sort of a 4 B, C, D, wherever we're at on that side of things, are these action cards that are open in the area, that are dynamic and that change the gameplay. So it's not just, I have a static sort of faction that is never going to be influenced or potentially be very strategic in what I want to do. I mean, you have to be tactically decisional in this game. You have to take a look at what action cards are out there, and as other people are using what you may want, adapt to what you're doing, because there are quite a plethora of them in the first place, and you need to be able to adapt in what you're doing in order to react to what the others are doing around you. And again, how tactical do you like from that side of things? Or are you looking for something that is much more grandiose in strategy? Because this has tactics and nauseum in a good way. Point 5 is how conflict is resolved, is the battle side of things, right? The extermination side of the 4X. So what does this do differently? This does things differently in terms of, again, being very tactical in nature, where it is diceless combat. It is trying to now not necessarily eliminate chance or probability. That is more of what Voidfall is claiming to be, is where you are going in knowing who's going to win already. So you need to plan out and have the conflict and the bluff portion, where you have the question, the mere threat of war is potentially more harmful, where this is very tactical in nature, where you are playing tactics cards, where you are picking up your 6 tactics cards, plus any masteries or anything else that you have involved in that, and you are playing them simultaneously against the person whose conflict you are going against. But these tactics cards will have requirements that you have to meet in terms of who is taking part of the battle, what types of units, and they also have an initiative value that is going to determine who goes first. So that is also going to have an influence. So it's not luckless, but there is also more skill into it, more strategy than just rolling a die and hoping for a slightly better result to mitigate the potential losses that you could be experiencing otherwise. So it is not pure decisional. It is not pure perfect information. So if you're looking for perfect information, you should be looking at one of those other games. But it is enough of a blend where you feel like you have control, but you still feel like, unlike what Voidfall is claiming, where you still have a chance even if your chips are a little bit down. Now, again, how does this compare in other ways? Well, I mean, unlike Twilight Imperium, I mean, the political side of things is relatively straightforward. There is not there is not nearly as heavy of component as politicking between factions, between players and alliances, and that sort of thing. So if that is what you're looking for, that is not one of the biggest strengths of this game. It's just not, and that's okay. I mean, this is a very strong Euro-ish engine building action optimization, making them more efficient, and then adjusting accordingly based on the differing variable endpoints or objectives in terms of getting victory points that can change vastly differently from game to game, even without using those said modules or the campaign legacy-esque that I talked about at the beginning, because you're given cards that you can sort through, that you can choose randomly of, and put it out there. So it is also not the same, okay, I'm going to go this route. I'm going to go this strategy. Oh, wow, this is how we're scoring things. This game is slightly different than the last game, so I'm going to have to start thinking and taking a little bit of a different approach from that side of things. So it's sort of based on my impressions of it, based on what we know about it. You know, I don't have access, or I didn't play any of the Aftermath, so I can't speak more to the specifics of how that may change some of my impressions on it. But those are the things that you sort of need to know going into this to help you figure out whether or not this is right for you. Do you like some of those aspects of the 5 things that I've talked about? Or are you looking for something else? Are you looking for something that does not meet those criteria? And I think just from that side of things, you have to know what works for you. So as always, I like putting this out there to help you make the best decision for you and whether or not these things align with your thoughts on this game in the first place. So that is Fractal Beyond the Void. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know your questions or your concerns or anything else I can help with. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Click subscribe if you haven't. Stay classy. I'll see you later.